Hey guys, it's Angelo, and welcome to the first look of the Shadow Priest on the World of Warcraft Shadowlands Alpha. I am very excited to make this video, and as many of you were probably already expecting, there are quite a few interesting changes we need to talk about. From ability unpruning, so formerly removed abilities returning to the spec, to talents being removed and new ones implemented, the Shadow Priest is seeing a lot of changes so far. Keep in mind that though this is still the alpha, so everything is subject to change, and you can assume that a lot of things are in fact going to change. However, in the first look video, I will still cover everything that has changed up to this point, giving you guys a detailed look at the structure of this new Shadow Priest. In this video, I'll be addressing all current class changes, so talents, abilities, and removed aspects of the class, as well as give you my opinion on how the spec is currently looking when considering this for the actual Shadowlands release. Kind of like a personal feedback, perhaps the developers will watch this. Now, if you would like to join the discussion with all things related to Priest, be sure to join our Discord server with the link in the description of course, and while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as I've seen that over 90% of you guys who watch my videos are actually not subscribed. As I'll be making a ton more Shadowlands videos, be sure to do so if you'd like to stay informed. Good, now that being said, and without any further ado, let's go right ahead and have a look. Alright, let's start us off with our abilities. In Shadowlands, all priests will have access to certain core abilities no matter their spec. There are quite a few new spells here for the Shadow Priest, and those are Mind Soothe, Power Infusion, Desperate Prayer, Flash Heal, and Shadow Word Death, which is now a spell again and not a talent. Now Flash Heal seems to change into Shadow Mend, or just isn't available for Shadow Priests anymore, as even though the patch notes state that Shadow Priests have Flash Heal, when logging onto the alpha I actually only have Shadow Mend in that spec. We also have some new Covenant abilities, which are part of the new aspect of the Covenants in Shadowlands, granting you various different abilities depending on your class and your spec. I will go into greater detail with those in a separate video in order to keep this one a bit more structured, and once that is done, the link should pop up on your screen pretty much now. For now, we'll just give them a brief rundown. The Boon of the Ascended from the Curians grants us access to the Ascended Nova, which replaces Mind Flay during its duration and is essentially a heavy AoE bombing ability. Mind Games from the Venthyr, which is a single target damage spell with a small twist, and Unholy Nova from the Necrolords, which is an AoE dot spread, and Fey Blessings from the Night Fae, which for Shadow Priests grants our Shadow Mend and Mind Blast damage reduction on that given target, and grants allies mana for each power word shield applied to them, while Void Bolt reduces the cooldown of allied major abilities. Very interesting so far, and again, those will be covered in a separate video. Good. Next up, we'll be taking a look at our talents, and currently there are only a few changes here, but very interesting ones nonetheless. The talent tree of the Shadow Priest has remained mostly the same. The first change we see comes in our level 40 talent row, where we have a brand new talent, Death and Madness, which replaces the talent Shadow Word Death. Each time a target dies after being slain with Shadow Word Death, the Shadow Priest gains a high amount of insanity, currently 40 insanity over 4 seconds, and resets the cooldown of Shadow Word Death instantly. A very interesting and cool new talent, which could indeed tremendously change the playstyle in combination with certain talents, especially in scenarios where enemies die frequently, so Mythic Plus or raid bosses with a lot of small adds spawning frequently. Our next talent change comes in our level 50 talent row. Now keep in mind our levels are squished to a maximum of 60, and that change comes in form of Surrender to Madness. Surrender to Madness has been reworked and essentially combines our current Dark Ascension and Surrender to Madness, but with a new twist. The Shadow Priest will instantly receive 100 insanity and casts Void Eruption on the current target, while for the next 25 seconds, all insanity generating abilities generate 100% more insanity, and everything is of course castable while moving. Now here's the twist. If the target does not die within 25 seconds of using Surrender to Madness, the Shadow Priest dies instead. This brings a similar playstyle back like the one from Legion Surrender to Madness. However, the STM windows are much shorter and can essentially be triggered multiple times within different scenarios if you succeed in killing your target. So far, these two changes alone seem very interesting, and it remains to be seen if there are any more good ones to come. Good, now let's take a look at the spec specific changes. It's important to state here that some abilities now have ranks, and will not unlock their full potential until their second rank. For one, there's Dispersion, which will not halt your insanity drain by 100% until rank 2, while Mind Blast's cooldown on rank 2 is reduced by 7 seconds. Mind Flay is now available at level 14, while Power Word Shield now costs 3.5% of your base mana. Vampiric Embrace will only heal for 50% of the damage you deal with single target damage until it's rank 2, which is when it will heal for 85%. Once you're level 48, Vampiric Touch dispels will cause the dispeller to flee in horror for 3 seconds, and this also generates 6 insanity. Now of course this is only important for PvP though. Now we'll be coming to the most important change here, which is Void Bolt's ability to be cast while channeling Mind Flay once it's rank 2. Yes, you will be able to cast Mind Flay and Void Bolt simultaneously, which will eliminate having to clip your Mind Flays. However, it needs to be said here that making Void Bolt castable while moving creates problems. Ever since Void Bolt was implemented, it served as an important way for Shadow Priests to move around while being able to deal damage. For the more advanced players watching, this is what a DPS player calls stutter stepping, or moving only when you can do so while your global cooldown is, well, on cooldown. Void Bolt allowed us to do exactly that, and it has actually become an important way of maximizing our damage while also moving as required. If Void Bolt is now castable while channeling Mind Flay, this means that under ideal circumstances, you will want to cast them together, or rather you'll ideally want to be channeling Mind Flay before casting Void Bolt, which would of course require you to stand still. On top of that, due to your global cooldown still being in the way, this means that your Void Bolt will be cast at a point where your Mind Flay is almost channeled through all the way, which can cause you to actually clip it, or missing the window where you can cast Void Bolt while channeling Mind Flay completely, making this mechanic feel very clunky currently. Now, there are a few potential fixes for this, some arguably better than others. For one, drop Void Bolt from the global cooldown and give it a shorter actual cooldown so that the player can cast it while the Mind Flay channel has just begun, or at least make Mind Flay castable while moving during the duration of Void form. Obviously that second fix will be very strong and will almost shoot over the top, but honestly I can't think of any other good solution of fixing this issue, otherwise the mechanic will possibly become redundant, which obviously shouldn't happen. Good. Now, I'm sure many of you are awaiting my personal feedback on how the Shadow Priest is looking so far. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there already memeing the spec, saying Shadow is dead, Shadow is gutted lol, and so on, but honestly it's too early to really say that. The changes which we're able to see thus far are certainly interesting and can make for a better Shadow Priest than we have in Battle for Azeroth, but some things obviously still require tuning or changes. The missing Azerite traits are incredibly apparent, as there is no Chorus of Insanity or Whispers of the Damned to make traversing void forms easier and more fluent. The developers should definitely try and hold on to that playstyle, but in order to do so we definitely need some modifiers, or at least other means of making the playstyle feel more fluent. Also, keep in mind that without Chorus of Insanity, we have less of an incentive to stay in void form for an extended period of time, which kind of goes against the whole idea of the Shadow Priest. Adding Shadow Word Death to the table is good, and what's also great about it is that it can be used no matter the health of your enemy. However, it doesn't really fit the flow of the playstyle, as it essentially only serves as a filler every 14 seconds whenever Shadow Word Void, or rather both charges, are on cooldown. It also does a lot less damage than Shadow Word Void, shifting it even lower on our priority list, which is also a bit weird. Apart from all of these changes and new features, the Shadow Priest does still feel like the battle for Azeroth Shadow Priest, just a lot slower and with rocks in the way of the playstyle. Where exactly Blizzard plans on going with the spec remains to be seen, but in my opinion there's still a lot of work to do here in order to make the spec viable. Keep in mind that the only reason, and this literally was the only reason that we were viable in Battle for Azeroth, was essentially making use of the 3 cores of insanity traits we were able to use. Without the critical strike modifier, and as well as without the haste gain via lingering insanity, the spec is genuinely the weakest spec in the game by a considerable amount, so the developers definitely want to keep that in mind when looking forward, but I'm sure they will. Let me know what you think. Do you think these changes will prove to be good ones? Are you liking the new talents and the fact that we have power infusion back? Be sure to let me know in the comments below or join our Discord and ask away along with countless other priests in our community. As always, thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to all of my supporters over at Patreon. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to stay updated on the content of this channel, feel free to subscribe. Now, have a good one my friends, enjoy patch 8.3 or the Shadowlands alpha if you have gotten an invite, and be sure to give valuable feedback if you did, as that helps the developers out a lot more than you may think. Alright guys, next up we'll be covering the Disc Priest and Holy Priest changes before going into detail with the Covenant abilities, so I will see you all in the next one.